I will never forget that morning. The hospital corridor stretched endlessly, sterile and suffocating. Every tile seemed to echo my heartbeat. In my hand was a single folder. Inside, a small but powerful image, my ultrasound. The doctor looked at me, eyes wide, hesitant, almost afraid. He stepped closer, careful, like he was approaching a wild animal. "Are you considering a divorce?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. I froze. My husband, Ethan, the man who had once claimed every corner of my life, suddenly became a shadow hovering in that quiet hospital. "You need to leave him," the doctor continued, voice low but urgent, "for your safety and the child's." Silence, my throat closed, my heartbeat thundered in my ears. I had never expected a stranger to urge me toward the end of my marriage, yet here he was. Rain drizzled against the hospital windows as if the sky itself was mourning my hesitation. My mind raced, thoughts colliding violently. Why could I survive this? I returned home, still clutching that folder. Ethan was there waiting, smiling, casual, deadly in his calmness. "Everything all right?" he asked. I looked through the window. The rain fell lightly, rhythmically, washing away everything except the truth. I had a choice now. I could stay trapped under his shadow or I could fight. The first time I told myself I am leaving, it felt impossible. Yet somewhere deep inside, a quiet fire ignited, not rage, not anger, survival, determination, the kind that cannot be silenced. That night I sat alone, staring at the ultrasound. The child within me, my daughter, was already teaching me the hardest lesson. Courage does not announce itself, it is quietly relentless. I realized something crucial. I would not simply survive, I would outlast him. The days that followed were a blur of calculated calm. Ethan moved through our home like a king, surveying a kingdom he believed he owned. But I had already started building my escape in silence. Every smile I gave him, every nod was measured, because I couldn't let him know I had already begun planning my freedom. I started small, a new bank account under my name only, a hidden suitcase in the closet, encrypted notes on my laptop detailing everything he did, the patterns, the control, the subtle manipulation that always left me questioning my own sanity. The doctor's words replayed in my mind every night. "If you stay, it's not just your life at stake, it's your child's." I shivered, thinking about the little life growing inside me. She didn't deserve fear. She didn't deserve a father who disguised obsession as love. Then came the first confrontation I had rehearsed 1,000 times in my head. Ethan noticed me taking a call privately. He narrowed his eyes. "Who was that?" he asked, the sharpness of his tone slicing the air. "Just the doctor," I said lightly, keeping my expression calm. "Routine checkup." He leaned closer, the scent of his cologne overwhelming. "You're hiding something," he said. I smiled carefully. "Always keep smiling," I reminded myself. "No, just protecting both of us." He laughed, a cold, sharp laugh that made my stomach twist. "You think I'm the enemy?" I looked into his eyes, steady, unflinching. "I think reality is the enemy when it pretends to be love." For a moment, he didn't respond. Then he turned, leaving the room. That night, I began to truly understand the gravity of what I faced. A man who had conditioned me to fear every gesture, every tone, every shadow, and yet I was beginning to reclaim my own instincts. I called the lawyer recommended by the doctor. We scheduled consultations, drafted papers, mapped out timelines. Every step was deliberate. I was no longer a woman reacting to danger. I was a strategist planning survival. Weeks passed. I gathered evidence, messages, videos, proof of coercion. Each piece was a nail in the coffin of the life I had been forced into. Then came the night I realized how deep Ethan's obsession ran. I overheard him on the phone, speaking to someone I didn't recognize. His voice was low, furious. "She's planning something. I can't let her do it." My stomach dropped. He knew. He was always 2 steps ahead, or at least he thought he was. That night I went to bed clutching my belly, whispering to the tiny life inside me, "You are my reason, you are my armor." I didn't sleep, I didn't dare. Every creak of the house sounded like a threat, every shadow a lurking enemy. By the next morning, I was exhausted but resolute. I could feel the tension coil like a spring in my body. I knew the first strike in this psychological battle had to come from me, and I had to be meticulous. I began documenting everything in detail, his moods, his patterns, his subtle psychological manipulations. Each note was a weapon, each observation a shield, and then it happened. The first confrontation that would change everything. He questioned my whereabouts with a force I hadn't anticipated, but instead of panic, I met him with calmness. "I'm just living my life," I said, steady. "Nothing more." His eyes narrowed, but I didn't flinch. For the first time, I realized that fear could be a choice, not my default. That night, I made a decision. I would protect myself, my unborn child, and my future at all costs. This was no longer about negotiation. This was about survival, and survival required strategy, patience, and courage. I had no idea how high the stakes would rise or how twisted the path ahead would become, but I knew one thing with certainty: I would not be broken. The weeks that followed were a delicate dance. Every interaction with Ethan became a test of control, every word carefully chosen, every glance measured. He believed he could see through me, but I had learned to speak in silence and maneuver in shadows. I started documenting everything obsessively. Notes on his habits, recordings of subtle threats, dates, times, incidents that once seemed insignificant, but together painted a picture of a man who thrived on fear. I called it my survival ledger. One evening, he cornered me in the kitchen. His voice was low, menacing. "You're acting distant." "Who are you talking to?" I looked at him evenly, placing my hands on the counter. "Just planning for the future," I said. He laughed, a sharp sound that reverberated through the small space. "You think you can outsmart me?" I didn't answer. Instead, I smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hinted at calm beneath a storm. He didn't understand it. He couldn't. By now, I had learned something crucial. Power thrives on reaction. If I stopped reacting, I could regain control. That night, I stayed up late, creating a safety net. Lawyers, escape routes, emergency contacts, every detail meticulously planned, every angle covered. I had to be ready because I knew his obsession would escalate. Days later, I discovered the first sign of true danger. He had accessed my phone without my knowledge, a silent intrusion into my life. But I caught it. Every small act he tried to use to assert dominance became evidence. I cataloged everything. Then came the emotional manipulation, the subtle guilt, the half apologies, the comments meant to make me question my reality, but I recognized it all now. Each tactic he used was predictable, almost mechanical. I could anticipate it, and I did. I began rehearsing the confrontation in my mind. I knew when the time came I would need to act decisively, and it did. It started with a phone call in the middle of the night. His tone, casual at first, became a threat of menace. "You're not taking this from me," he said. I hung up, quietly, carefully, not because I feared him, but because I was choosing the moment and the method to reclaim my life. In that moment, I understood a profound truth. Survival was not enough. I had to be strategic, deliberate, and above all, fearless. Weeks later, I consulted my lawyer in secret. Together, we filed preliminary documents to protect myself and my unborn child. Every step was calculated, every move was deliberate. I could feel the tension coiling tighter, but I welcomed it. Fear was no longer my master, it was my signal to act. Ethan began to notice changes. My distance, my calm composure, the subtle defiance in my gaze. He didn't understand that I was no longer a passive participant. I had transformed, not just mentally, but strategically. One night, I watched him in the living room, oblivious to the extent of my planning. He laughed at some trivial joke on television. I let him. I didn't react. I simply observed. Every movement, every expression cataloged. Every nuance of control noted. It was exhausting but necessary. Every day I learned a new way to outmaneuver him. Every night I strengthened my resolve. The day finally came when I realized the truth. The battle wasn't just about leaving him. It was about reclaiming my identity, my autonomy, and my daughter's safety before she was even born. I was no longer a victim. I was a strategist, a survivor, a mother in waiting, and a force he had never imagined. The first step in reclaiming my life was subtle but irreversible. I began creating layers of separation, small, calculated moves that would give me control without alerting Ethan. I changed routines, altered schedules, and carefully curated my interactions. Each action was deliberate, a brick in the foundation of a life he could no longer manipulate. One morning, I walked into the kitchen with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. Ethan was already there, pouring coffee. His gaze flicked toward me, searching for any hint of weakness. I ignored it, focusing instead on the rising sun outside the window. Light, warm and unrelenting, streamed across the countertop, illuminating dust particles like tiny stars. He spoke, as though reading my silence as defiance. "You've been distant lately." I smiled softly, the kind of smile that conceals layers beneath. "I've been thinking," I said, "about the future." That phrase, the future, became my mantra. It reminded me of the child growing inside me, of the life I was building, and of the strength I had quietly accumulated. I had prepared a network of allies. Friends I trusted, lawyers, and even discreet support from those who had endured similar experiences. Each of these connections was a silent safeguard, a reminder that I was no longer alone in this struggle. I was part of a system larger than myself, one designed to protect me and my child. Ethan, oblivious to the depth of my planning, continued to behave as though control was inherent. He didn't see that the ground had shifted beneath him. Every step I took was calculated to ensure his missteps could no longer reach me. The psychological tension intensified when he tried to manipulate me emotionally, using guilt and insinuation. I recognized each tactic immediately. I didn't flinch. I didn't justify. I simply noted it, recording his behavior meticulously. It was no longer about fear, it was about documentation and strategy. One night he attempted an ultimatum. "If you go through with this, everything changes," he said, voice low and dangerous. I met his gaze steadily. Everything changes because I choose it, I replied. My words were measured, deliberate, unwavering. For the first time, I saw genuine uncertainty flicker across his features. I realized then that my presence alone, calm, resolute, unshakable, was becoming a weapon, not one that destroyed with fury, but one that dismantled control silently, methodically, and irrevocably. The days blurred together as I continued my preparations. I reinforced safety measures, collected evidence, and rehearsed scenarios in my mind. Every decision was guided by one principle: protect myself and my child at all costs. And then the first twist came. I discovered that Ethan had been monitoring my activities more closely than I had anticipated. He had hired someone to track my movements, a private investigator hidden in plain sight. At first, panic threatened to overwhelm me, but I reminded myself knowledge is power, and now I knew exactly what I was up against. I countered carefully. I left false trails, altered patterns, and manipulated the flow of information. Every move was calculated to maintain his illusion of control while I quietly secured my escape. Through this process, I began to understand a deeper truth: freedom is not merely a physical state. It is psychological, emotional, and strategic. True liberation requires dismantling the power structures that enforce fear, and I was building that carefully, piece by piece. By the time the week ended, I felt a shift in the air. The tension had transformed from fear to anticipation. I could feel the moment approaching when I would finally reclaim control entirely. The strategy was clear, the evidence was secured, the network was ready, and I, once terrified and powerless, was now resolute and unstoppable. The child growing inside me, my daughter, was already teaching me lessons I had never anticipated. Strength is not loud, it is quiet, persistent, invisible until the right moment, and that truth, I realized, would define both our futures. The storm was coming, though it had yet to announce itself. Every day, Ethan's behavior grew more unpredictable, subtle, creeping aggression intertwined with feigned calm. It was as if he could sense the shift, the reclamation of power that I carried quietly in my posture, in my words, in my very presence. I began documenting everything with even greater precision. Every conversation, every movement, every subtle manipulation. What once felt like paranoia now became a map, a guide to understanding his mind and anticipating his next move. I could see patterns forming, almost like a blueprint of control, and in that I found clarity. One afternoon, he confronted me about a meeting I had attended, an innocuous check-in with a friend. "Why are you always sneaking around?" he demanded, eyes flashing with irritation. I met his gaze steadily. "I'm not sneaking, I'm living," I said. The calm in my voice unsettled him. It wasn't fear, it was certainty. He had grown used to reactions, panic, guilt, excuses, but none of that appeared now, only control, my control. I began implementing small but deliberate twists in our interactions. Texts left unanswered, small shifts in routine, questions posed but never answered. Each action was designed to establish boundaries, to show him that the old rules no longer applied. At the same time, I was preparing a backup plan for my daughter's future, a safety net in case things escalated beyond what I could manage in the immediate moment. I coordinated with lawyers, supportive friends, and even discreet authorities who could intervene if necessary. Every detail mattered, every possibility accounted for. The psychological tension between us became a silent battlefield. He would try subtle manipulations, questions that felt casual but were probing, small remarks designed to evoke guilt. I responded with calm, measured presence. Each encounter became a test, and I passed with precision. Then came the first major twist. I discovered evidence that Ethan had been hiding financial accounts, assets, and even personal correspondence that could have given him leverage over me. It was infuriating, but not unexpected. I had anticipated deception, it was part of his pattern. I began cataloging the hidden trails, linking them to the evidence I had already collected. This was no longer just about leaving. It was about ensuring that he could not find a way to manipulate or control me after the separation. Every small piece of hidden information became a tool, a lever I could use to secure our freedom. My daughter's presence in my mind became a guiding force. Even before she was born, I felt the weight of responsibility, the clarity of purpose that comes with protecting a life that depends entirely on your strength. Fear no longer dictated my actions. Strategy did, patience did, determination did. I noticed subtle cracks forming in Ethan's behavior. He was more agitated, more impulsive. The sense of control he once wielded effortlessly was slipping. My calm, deliberate movements were dismantling his psychological advantage. He didn't understand that fear had been replaced by preparation. He didn't understand that he was losing not through confrontation, but through quiet, relentless reclamation. One night I confronted him not with anger, not with accusation, but with quiet, unwavering truth. "This is not about us anymore," I said. "This is about me and my child and the life I will build without fear." His expression faltered. For the first time, I saw uncertainty replace the usual calculation. He realized, perhaps too late, that the power he thought he possessed was gone. I left the room without another word, every step measured, confident, and deliberate. That night, as I prepared for sleep, I realized that the storm I had feared was not coming from the outside. It had always been within him, and now the first signs of his collapse were visible. I breathed deeply, feeling the tiny life inside me. The realization hit me like lightning. The battle was no longer just about survival. It was about reclaiming identity, autonomy, and power in a life that had been stolen. And the most profound twist of all, freedom would be our inheritance, long before my daughter ever took her first steps into the world. The tension had become almost tangible, a presence in the house that pressed against my chest. Every creak of the floorboards, every shifting shadow felt amplified, but now instead of fear, I felt readiness. I had transformed my anxiety into strategy, my dread into preparation. Ethan had begun to notice subtle changes in me. My calm composure, my measured reactions, my absence of panic, these were foreign to him. He tried to provoke, to unsettle me with veiled threats and casual intimidation, but nothing worked. I had learned the language of control, and I spoke it fluently. One evening, he attempted to corner me in the living room, his voice low and sharp. "You're hiding something," he said, the words laced with menace. I smiled faintly, keeping my tone light. "I'm not hiding, I'm protecting what matters." His eyes narrowed. He didn't understand that the protection I spoke of was not about him, but about the child inside me and the future I had begun to build. I had spent weeks creating contingencies. Escape routes, emergency contacts, and precise documentation of his behavior, all arranged so that even if he acted unpredictably, I would remain steps ahead. I had learned to anticipate his moves, to see the patterns in his obsession, and to respond with calculated precision. The psychological battle intensified. He tried to manipulate with guilt, to insinuate wrongdoing, to twist reality against me, but I had trained myself to see through the tactics. Every word, every gesture was cataloged, every intention logged, every potential threat neutralized before it could take hold. Then came an unexpected twist. A visitor claiming to be a friend of his came to the house. The man's presence felt ominous, but I maintained composure, offering polite civility while discreetly gathering information. He lingered, probing, testing. I answered cautiously, dropping no clues, observing every detail. After the visitor left, I documented everything: descriptions, dialogue, timing, and the subtle ways he had tried to assert influence. Every interaction became data, every encounter a piece of the puzzle that would secure our safety. Meanwhile, my daughter's movements within me reminded me daily of why this fight mattered. Each heartbeat, each shift was a signal that the stakes were higher than my own survival. They encompassed a new life, innocent and vulnerable, relying entirely on my strength and foresight. The next few days became a carefully orchestrated performance. Ethan monitored me, suspicious yet unaware of the extent of my planning. I allowed myself subtle liberties, leaving notes in hidden places, preparing discreet exits, practicing phrases that would assert my authority without triggering aggression. Then, one night, a minor but pivotal event occurred. He discovered a partially encrypted document on my laptop, evidence of my preparations. His reaction was explosive, anger mixed with disbelief. He tried to intimidate me verbally, but I remained calm. I did not flinch, I did not apologize. That night, I understood something critical. True control is silent, deliberate, and unyielding. The power he had relied on, the ability to provoke fear, was gone. He could attempt coercion, but it would meet only composure and resolve. I began to feel the tide turning. Each calculated step I had taken, each layer of preparation, had begun to dismantle his influence. He was still present, still threatening in potential, but his psychological dominance had fractured. The final twist of this chapter arrived subtly. I received a confidential message from a lawyer who confirmed that some of Ethan's hidden assets had been flagged and could be secured for protective measures. This discovery reinforced my strategy. The legal system, combined with careful documentation and timing, was now a formidable ally. I breathed deeply, feeling the child inside me move. The sensation was grounding, reminding me of why every action mattered. The storm of control, manipulation, and threat had not passed, but I had learned to navigate it. I was no longer simply surviving, I was asserting a deliberate path forward. By now, the house felt like a stage where I controlled the script. Every room, every hallway, every glance carried purpose. Ethan moved through it unaware that the rules had changed. The old dynamics, fear, compliance, subtle intimidation, no longer applied. I had become the silent architect of our reality. I spent hours each day documenting, analyzing, and anticipating. Each conversation, each nuance of behavior, each fleeting glance from him became a point of data. The smallest gestures revealed intent, the smallest words hinted at plans. He believed he controlled the narrative, but he had unknowingly handed me the pen. Then came the first major escalation. One morning, he discovered a hidden folder on my computer. The panic in his eyes was subtle but unmistakable. He tried to mask it with casual concern, but the underlying aggression leaked through. "You're planning something," he said, voice calm but sharp. I met his gaze evenly. "I'm planning for the life I want," I said softly. No tremor, no hesitation, just resolve. He faltered as though my words had unlocked a reality he had never considered, that I could act independently, decisively, without fear, without needing him. I had anticipated this moment. Every reaction, every question, every attempt to probe my intentions had been rehearsed in my mind. I did not flinch, did not rationalize, did not submit. I simply existed as I had prepared to exist, free, unwavering, untouchable. Over the next few days, I observed him closely. His usual patterns of control became erratic, subtle manipulations were misfired, and his usual intimidation tactics lost potency. The psychological battlefield was shifting. The predator became uncertain, and the prey had learned to navigate the terrain with expertise. One evening, I discovered another layer of deception. Ethan had attempted to access my phone remotely. A small intrusion, almost imperceptible but revealing. I documented the attempt, countering with measures that ensured he could gain nothing. Each new discovery became a tool, each threat a chance to consolidate my control. The twists continued. A neighbor reported seeing someone loitering near the house, someone I later confirmed had been hired by Ethan. Another attempt to assert dominance, another proof that he underestimated me. I traced the visit carefully, noting every detail, and adjusted my plans accordingly. Through it all, I remained deliberate. Calm, observant, I began to notice subtle changes in myself too. The constant vigilance, once exhausting, had honed my senses. I was sharper, quicker, more intuitive. Fear had been replaced by strategy. Anxiety had been replaced by calculation. Even my daughter seemed to sense the change. The kicks, the movements, the rhythm of her presence became a grounding force. Every heartbeat, every flutter was a reminder of what I was protecting and why the stakes could not be ignored. I realized then that the battle was no longer about confrontation. It was about timing, patience, precision. Every move I made now was deliberate, designed to erode his control while securing my autonomy and the safety of the life I carried. The first glimpse of victory came quietly. A document I had flagged earlier, financial and legal, was successfully secured with the help of the lawyer. A small but critical step in ensuring that Ethan could no longer leverage power against me. The psychological momentum was shifting. The foundation of control he relied on was crumbling under careful, patient measures. I sat that night in the living room, listening to the rain outside. Each drop seemed to echo the slow, unstoppable progress I had made. I was no longer reacting, I was directing, I was no longer afraid. I was preparing for the inevitable confrontation, knowing that when it came, I would not just survive, it would be the final act of reclaiming everything he had tried to take. By the time I realized the final phase had begun, it was already too late for him to stop it. Not because I had rushed, but because I had waited long enough, carefully enough. Ethan had grown restless. That was the first real sign. Predators become reckless when they feel their control slipping. His movements were sharper, his words more careless, his patience thinner. He didn't know why he felt threatened, only that he did, and uncertainty terrified him. One night he asked me directly, without pretense, without disguise, "You think you're smarter than me now?" I didn't answer immediately. I was sitting on the couch, one hand resting over my stomach, feeling my daughter shift gently inside me. I let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable, until it became power. "I think I'm done being afraid," I finally said. That was when something broke behind his eyes. Not rage, panic. He had never understood fear as anything other than a weapon. Now it was pointed at him. From that moment on, everything accelerated. He began making mistakes. Small ones at first, contradicting his own lies, forgetting which version of events he had told me, slipping emotionally when he thought I wasn't paying attention. But I was always paying attention. Always. I noticed when he started deleting messages. I noticed when he began checking my location more frequently. I noticed when he stayed out late, returning tense, distracted. He was trying to build something. I just didn't know what yet, so I followed the patterns. Every action has logic. Every behavior leaves a trail. And when I finally saw what he was planning, my blood turned cold. He wasn't trying to stop me from leaving. He was trying to make me look unstable. The realization hit like a slow explosion. He was setting a narrative, subtle, invisible, deadly. Casual comments to friends, selective stories, gentle suggestions that I was overwhelmed, emotional, not myself lately. Gaslighting, but on a public scale. He was trying to erase me before I could escape. That night I didn't sleep. I built countermeasures instead. I recorded everything. I backed up every file. I documented timelines. I sent copies to secure locations. I prepared witnesses. And then I did something he would never expect. I let him believe it was working. I began acting uncertain. I asked small, harmless questions. I pretended to hesitate. I let him feel powerful again because power makes people sloppy, and sloppy people reveal everything. Within days, I had proof of his plan, audio messages, a trail of contradictions so clear even he wouldn't be able to deny it, and then the twist neither of us expected. The doctor called me, the same doctor who had warned me. His voice was urgent, controlled. "You need to come in today." I thought something was wrong with the baby. My hands shook as I grabbed my keys, my breath shallow, heart pounding. But when I arrived, the concern on his face wasn't medical, it was personal. "I shouldn't be telling you this," he said. "But I can't stay silent." Then he told me the truth. Ethan had been contacting clinics, requesting information, asking about mental evaluations, asking about stress-related conditions. Not for himself, for me. He was building a case, not to stop me, to discredit me. To make me disappear without force. And suddenly everything made sense. The manipulation, the performance, the narrative. He wasn't trying to win emotionally, he was trying to erase me legally. But he had underestimated two things: my preparation and my patience. That day, the final strategy clicked into place. I wasn't going to escape quietly. I was going to expose him completely, irrevocably, not with rage, not with chaos, but with clarity so sharp it would cut through every lie he had ever told. I walked back into the house that evening like nothing had changed. I smiled. I cooked, I spoke gently, and I watched him, because the next move would end everything, not in his favor, in mine. The most dangerous thing about Ethan was not his anger, it was his patience. He didn't explode, he calculated, he planted seeds. He let doubt do the work for him, and now that I knew what he was trying to build, a version of me that could be erased, dismissed, institutionalized, discredited, I understood the true scope of his plan. He wasn't trying to hurt me, he was trying to rewrite me. That night I didn't confront him, I didn't cry, I didn't accuse, I played my role perfectly. The fragile wife, the uncertain woman, the one who seemed overwhelmed. I asked him small questions. "Do you think I've been different lately? Do you think pregnancy can change your mind? Do you ever worry about me?" He answered with rehearsed tenderness, each word designed to sound loving while quietly constructing a story of instability. And I recorded everything, every tone shift, every contradiction, every moment of calculated sympathy. I began meeting people he had already spoken to: friends, acquaintances, co-workers, under the pretense of casual visits. I listened carefully, and what I heard chilled me. They were already primed, not against me but uncertain about me. "That's not like you," one of them said. "You seem stressed lately," another offered gently. "Ethan's been worried about you," someone else mentioned. He had begun months ago, planting, watering, waiting. That's when I understood something terrifying. He hadn't just planned my disappearance, he had practiced it. I shifted strategies immediately. I didn't defend myself, I documented instead. I let patterns reveal themselves. I let timelines form. I let his story collide with reality until the cracks became impossible to hide. Then I made my move. I scheduled a private legal consultation under a medical pretense he would never question. I brought everything: logs, recordings, witness statements, metadata, timestamps. The lawyer didn't interrupt me once. When I finished, she leaned back and said quietly, "He's not trying to control you, he's trying to nullify you." Exactly. We built a plan that would not just protect me, it would dismantle him. Legally, psychologically, publicly, not with spectacle, with precision. I began reversing the narrative. I spoke openly about stress, but truthfully. I mentioned feeling controlled, but calmly. I shared documentation with dates, not emotion. I didn't accuse, I revealed. People started asking questions, not about me, about him. Then he made his fatal mistake: he pushed too hard. One evening, he confronted me in the kitchen, his voice low, careful, almost kind. "You've been telling people strange things about me," he said. I looked at him, calm, clear, no fear. "No," I replied. "I've been telling the truth." That was the moment he realized. Not that I knew, that I had outgrown him, and when control addicts lose control, they reveal everything. He threatened me, not violently, strategically. He told me no one would believe me, that I sounded unstable, that he had concerns about my mental state, and I let him talk. Because he had no idea I was recording. When he finished, I said only one thing: "Thank you." He frowned. "For what?" "For saying it out loud." That night, I sent the final file, the one that connected every lie, every pattern, every manipulation. The web he had built, now fully visible. I slept peacefully for the first time in months, because I knew what was coming: not revenge, exposure, the kind that doesn't scream, the kind that doesn't fight, the kind that simply reveals. And once the truth is seen, it can never be unseen. I placed my hand over my stomach. "I've got us," I whispered, and for the first time I truly believed it. The truth doesn't arrive with thunder, it doesn't explode, it doesn't scream, it doesn't beg to be believed. It waits, and then quietly it stands. The day everything collapsed for Ethan was not dramatic: no shouting, no chaos, no confrontation, just emails, phone calls, meetings, and questions he could no longer control. People began asking him for clarification, for proof, for consistency, and he had none. Because lies can only survive in isolation, truth survives in patterns, and I had patterns, weeks of documentation, months of recordings, timelines so precise they dismantled his narrative without emotion. When the legal process began, he was confident. That confidence lasted exactly 3 days. By day 4, he stopped smiling. By day 7, he stopped calling. By day 12, he stopped pretending. And when he finally realized what was happening, what I had done, he didn't rage, he froze. Because control addicts don't understand exposure, they understand dominance. They understand fear, they understand silence, but they don't understand clarity. And clarity destroys them. He tried to contact me, I didn't respond. He tried again and again and again. Silence became my final language, not because I was afraid, because I was done. The legal conclusion was not explosive, it was surgical. His attempts to discredit me collapsed under timestamps. His fabricated concerns unraveled under witness consistency. His financial leverage dissolved under documentation. Not one lie survived, not one, and the most poetic part, he had built the system that destroyed him. I had simply observed it. When the final paperwork was signed, I didn't cry, I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel triumphant, I felt empty, and then free. Freedom is quiet, it doesn't announce itself, it doesn't demand witnesses, it doesn't beg for validation, it simply exists. I moved, I changed my number, I rebuilt slowly, not dramatically, deliberately. My daughter was born on a morning filled with sunlight. No storms, no chaos, no shadows, just warmth. When I held her, I understood something I had never been taught. Survival is not the goal, ownership is. I didn't want her to grow up hearing about what I escaped. I wanted her to grow up inside what I built, safety. Stability, truth. Years passed, and one day while standing in a grocery store, a stranger smiled at me as I handed them a dropped wallet. "Thank you," they said. They didn't know me, they didn't know my story, they didn't need to. I walked home in the sun, carrying groceries and peace. Not victory, peace. I didn't defeat him, I outlived him, I outgrew him, I outdesigned him, and that is something monsters never anticipate. They expect resistance. They expect fear, they expect war, they do not expect clarity. And clarity is fatal to them. I don't tell my story often, not because I'm ashamed, but because I don't live inside it anymore. I live ahead of it, and that is the ending he never wanted me to have, but I took it anyway.